answer to all of those is pizza. I mean, pizza, they're not telling you what kind of pizza you have to eat. You could have all types of pizza. You could have pepperoni one day, cheese another, Hawaiian the next. You could even have dessert pizza. People are putting Nutella on pizza. You have options. Pizza. The answer is always pizza. Hello everybody, my name is La. I am the director of Next Gen on the Watertown campus. Welcome to Grace Students Live. Here we like to have some fun, laugh a little bit, and maybe discover a little bit about who we are, who God is to us, and who we are to Him. Everything about our lives is online, is digital. And as they say, pictures are worth 1,000 words. But we don't always get to control what those words are. For instance, how many of you guys have a picture that needs a little bit of explanation? Everyone should be raising their hands. Here is one of mine. I know what you guys are all thinking. She's picking her nose. But that hand belonged to somebody else. It was not my own. My friend decided that she wanted to be in the picture also, but it was too late for her to get into the picture fully, so all you caught is me squinting because of the flash and her finger going up my nose. Now, pictures are one thing, and videos, well, they're another. Videos can be cut up and changed quite easily. I've seen videos of people who have edited in a new set of interview questions after they've already done the interview, just to make the person look a little silly. Who would ever do such a thing? It's kind of messed up.
What's your favorite meal? Like if you could choose whatever meal you wanted, what would you choose? What's your go-to favorite dish?
Cheetah or jungle cat or something wild and ferocious and rare.
Pretty sure that's illegal. Where do you go? Never mind. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. I feel like school age is like the time where we experiment with how we show someone we care about them, kind of experimenting with our love language, if you will. And so I was just wondering, like, when you were in like high school or college, like how did you show someone you cared about them? Like, how did you express your love for someone else?
You know, going out at night, shooting water balloons at the girls' dorm, or we once
Cool.
we put a big Mickey Mouse face up on the clock tower on the center of campus on homecoming Sunday, stuff like that.
What did Mickey have to do with it?
We just figured we'd kind of poke him in the eye.
Poke him in the eye?
Yeah.
Never mind. I lost track of my questions. Let me just take a minute to see if I can.
The best award would be the preaching award at my seminary, just because that was really important to me, called and gifted to do that.
Super great. If you could have like a superpower, like power of invisibility or X-ray vision or flying, like which superpower would you choose? What would be your superpower? Pastor Brian's superpower.
So mowing the lawn, vacuuming, doing dishes. I love to make breakfast. I make breakfast 6 mornings a week, my whole life. Saturday's been pancake day.
Cool.
Yeah, I make these Swedish pancakes called Pancakes Lucan. Just stack them really high. They're really thin. They slide down really nice.
You know what? You're absolutely right. If there's a superpower to be had, it better be a pancake superpower. This is the most sense I think you've made all interviews so far. So this can kind of sometimes be a sensitive subject for people, so I apologize. The people want to know. When were you born?
Revolutionary War America. Big George Washington fan.
1700s?
Alexander Hamilton, Shaping the Country.
You know, you look good.
Yeah.
You look good. You're doing very well. I'm very impressed.
And interestingly, preachers and pastors played a really important role in society then. I mean, they were taken seriously, they were movers and shakers, they were in the middle of important conversations.
So that's where you got inspired. That's when you got inspired to become a pastor in the 1700s. You kind of remind me of someone.
Wait, they said 50 years old.
Species age differently.
You look good. What have you always wanted as a pet?
Something wild. Cheetah bear. Oh, all right. Yeah, that's me when I was, I don't know, what, maybe 2 years old. My father was a pastor. We were living upstate New York, a little town called Farmers Mills. He was pastor of a little country church. That's the parsonage. They called me Butterball. Okay. I was fat, round, curly-haired, and I had a cat and a dog because there were no kids around. It was completely rural. Okay. This is my grandfather on my father's side, and his my step-grandmother. He married again, and my grandfather's holding me when I was 1 or 2. It's the only time he ever held me, and I never knew him. He died shortly after that. So my father had a rough background. His mother left the family. He was raised by his dad in the Depression. Worked since he was 10 years old. I met his father, came to visit me from Florida, and that was the last we saw him. That's kindergarten graduation, Highland Falls, New York. I was pretty proud of myself. The truth is I love school. I'm a school nerd. I love school, and so I've had the best life I could imagine, frankly, and feel really blessed that way. So I would say to that kid, man, go for it every day and make the most of every day you got, because God has great things in front of you. Life can be really hard and painful, but even though life can be really bad and people can be bad, God is always good. So don't confuse life or people with God. God is good, and I have learned that I can trust God. Even when I don't understand, even when I get angry with Him, even when I don't understand, as time goes by, as I study the scriptures, as I watch Him work in my life, I've just learned I can trust God. I can point people to God with confidence, saying, He will be there for you. Hang in there with Him.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. I'll let her know. Okay. Blair? You're fired. Bye. Oh, okay. I think it's still recording. Yeah, let's keep going. Whether or not you guys like video games, I think we can all agree that we like to enter into another world or another reality sometimes. I mean, that's why we love Disney World or the theater or amusement parks, am I right? But for you guys who do actually like video games, you have a lot more options. There is Fortnite, there's Call of Duty, there's Minecraft, but how many of you guys have actually played a virtual reality game or a VR game? The cool thing about VR games is that you actually get to step in to that virtual reality. It feels like you're actually there. Whether you're fighting Darth Vader or zombies, but VR games can take some getting used to.
That's good.
was silly. Akash? Here's Akash, guys.
I'm a walker. I'm going to try to plant these feet right here. Hey everyone, my name is Akash Ahuja and I serve as the director for the East Lexington campus. A couple weeks ago, I came across this article in my Twitter feed that scientists are maybe starting to prove Plato's theory, like Plato from thousands of years ago, that the Earth might actually be made out of cubes. And the first thing in my mind was the first thing in everyone else's mind on Twitter, is that we really are living in the Minecraft universe. My middle school boys already know this about me, but I love Minecraft. It was a big part of my middle school experience. It was my go-to game. I watched YouTube videos of Minecraft stuff. I was on servers with my friends. I did all sorts of things. Most of my houses ended up looking like this, kind of like wooden log cabin. I wasn't the kind of person who does the caves or the mansions. But I think there's something special about Minecraft. Like, not only is the world made out of cubes, which is super cool, but that game has endured since I was in middle school. It's been going on for like 10 or 12 or 15 years with this big fan base. I think part of that is because you get to be Steve and you get to control your own story and you have this blank canvas. You can do whatever you want with it. You get to actually kind of choose your own adventure. It's really like those books, those choose your own adventure books, where you get to read and at some point it's like, hey, do you want to do this thing or that thing? If you want to do this, go to page 47 and keep reading. Or if you want to do that, like go to page 98 and keep reading. It's this special kind of thing where you get to be placed in the story a little bit more than you get to with other books or other movies. Tonight, in our story in Mark, I think we have a special invitation to get into the story a little more than usual, and so I'm really excited to share that with you. Our story tonight is from Mark 15, and there's only 16 chapters of Mark. So we're in the last couple of days before Jesus dies, and our passage is really the last couple of hours before Jesus dies. Blair spoke to us last week on the anointing of Jesus with perfume, and a lot has happened since then. Jesus kind of has his last dinner with his disciples. He predicts the betrayal of Judas. He goes to the garden to pray, and he gets arrested by the Jewish leaders. And what happens right before this passage is this arrest and this trial. These Jewish leaders are this group called the Sanhedrin, and they're basically experts in Jewish law. And they're having this whole overnight case trying to like try Jesus and see if he's guilty. And they pull an all-nighter trying to find more about if Jesus is guilty or not. And Jesus finally says like, hey, I'm the Son of God. And they're like, you're a liar and we need to put you to death. Even though Jesus is telling the truth, they decide that he is guilty. What's important to notice though is that this Sanhedrin, this like Supreme Court, doesn't actually have any kind of official power. Like they're not tied to the government, like they're not tied to the police. And so even though they're saying, Jesus, you're guilty, and they're saying, Jesus, you need to be put to death, they don't actually have any power to do any of that. And so that's where we're picking up with this story. Now, before I pick up with the story, we're going to have 15 verses of Jesus being on trial. I want you guys to guess in the chat right now, how many times will Jesus speak in these 15 verses? While you do that, here's 7.4 seconds of a flying squirrel taking off in flight. A bunny? Where? Oh, look at you. Amazing. For those of you who are guessing the YouTube chat, if any of you said just once, you're right. We're about to start reading Mark 15, and in these next 5 verses, Jesus is going to say all the words he has to say for this entire passage. Let's read that. This is Mark 15, verses 1 through 5. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You have said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they're accusing you of." But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. So the Sanhedrin stayed up all night making their plans, and they decided the best thing to do is tie Jesus up and bring him to Pilate. Now, Pilate is the Roman governing official who actually does have the power to sentence Jesus. And so they figure, well, we see him as guilty, so Pilate can see him as guilty too. And the whole thing about this last little passage is that, I don't know if you like courthouse dramas, but you have to understand that like this little section of Jesus' story kind of plays out like an episode of Law and Order. So anyways, Pilate asks Jesus one question: "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus gives him this answer: "You have said so." Now, I can picture Jesus like with his hands up, because what he's basically saying is yes, and he's basically saying it like, "Hey, you said it, not me." This is the one time that Jesus says anything in these whole 15 verses, and all he's doing is kind of confirming what someone else already said. Jesus stays so quiet, the Bible actually points this out. They bring up many accusations, and Pilate's like amazed at how quiet Jesus is at all this. And Jesus only says this one thing, and he doesn't even do anything. Like, Jesus was bound, he was handed over. All of this makes you kind of feel like the focus of this passage isn't actually on Jesus. We're going to have to keep reading to find out what that really means. Now, it was custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. Now, leave that up for just a little second longer. If you look at those verses, I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, just look at how the word "now" like totally interrupts like this flow of this story. It feels like the narrator is jumping in with voiceover to like tell us some more details. And as the audience, we can like feel the tension and the suspense building up. But here's the second thing I want to point out with these verses up here. When you read verses 6, 7, and 8, do you really need verse 7? Like, if I was helping someone write a paper, I would circle verse 7 and make a note like, hey, move this information to like when you actually introduce Barabbas. Like, you know, your ideas flow better if like verse 6 goes right into verse 8. But Mark knew what he was doing here. We have 15 verses in this story, and verse 7 is pretty much the middle of it, and it's introducing Barabbas. If you lived back in Jesus' time, you would know that the exact middle of a passage is like the most important part of that story. And I think what we're getting at with Jesus saying so little and doing so little, and Barabbas like introduced at the exact middle, is that this story is actually kind of more focused on Barabbas. Let's finish it out. "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked them. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So we come to the end of this passage, and it still will always boggle me just how quickly this crowd who was welcoming Jesus in 1 week ago is now shouting, "Crucify him." But as it ends, we see in verse 15, there's this direct contrast with Jesus being bound and Barabbas being released. And so Barabbas, someone who is entirely guilty, goes free, and Jesus is handed over to be crucified. So the focus of the story is, who is Barabbas? Like, who is this guy? He shows up in all 4 Gospels, but we really don't get a whole lot of information about him. Basically what is said in Mark is said in all the other 3. He's a man who is in prison for murder. and had taken part of an anti-government riot. Now, crucifixion wasn't like the death penalty for all death penalties. It was like a very specific, very humiliating kind of like, we're sending a message type death penalty. And it looks like Barabbas is the kind of person who actually would have deserved crucifixion. Like, as we read his story across all four Gospels, we see that he is guilty. Like, guilty, guilty, guilty. Like, there's not a chance that, like, he deserves to go free. But somehow, he gets to go. The man who deserved crucifixion is released back into this crowd. And Jesus, who is innocent, takes his place. Now think about this for just a second. If Jesus was just a good teacher, and Barabbas is going free and Jesus is going to the cross, Jesus is still dying for Barabbas. Like 100%, like Jesus is going in Barabbas' place. Like the man who is completely guilty is going free, and the man who's completely innocent is going to the cross. Even if Jesus was just a man, Jesus is still dying in place of this man who had done all these things wrong. But what is absolutely amazing, and why the story of Jesus is still being read thousands of years later, is that Jesus, we believe, was more than just a good teacher or a good person. That Jesus was who he said he was. He was the Son of God. And what's crazy about how Jesus was physically, literally going to die for Barabbas to physically, literally go free, Jesus died for us too. Like what Jesus did for Barabbas, he did for you too. And going back to like Minecraft and Choose Your Own Adventure books, I think a lot of times we read Bible stories and we see like what Jesus is saying or doing, and we're like, we should do that too. But in this case, we actually need to see ourselves as Barabbas, like completely guilty, deserving of what's coming our way, and Jesus stepping in pretty much out of the blue for Barabbas, and us being liberated by that. That Jesus is actually taking our place in the same way that he took Barabbas' place. We don't know what Barabbas did after this. Like I told you, it shows up in all four Gospels, but like only for this like little tiny section. We don't know if he was like proud of the fact that he'd like stood up for his cause and was like this big guy who like, oh, I deserve the death penalty, that's how hard I was. Or we don't know if he felt like really relieved that he gets to go off. We don't know what does he think about Jesus after this. We don't know any of those things. But if we see ourselves in this story, we get the awesome invitation to continue living the story. That we actually, in the Choose Your Own Adventure book, that we get the last couple pages to be blank and we write our own ending to this story. That if you see yourself as Barabbas, you see yourself as being freed and liberated by Jesus, and you see yourself as having the opportunity to go do something now with that story. And we don't know what Barabbas did. We don't know if he ended up like joining the followers of Jesus. We don't know if he kind of sat back and laid quiet. But that doesn't change the fact that he was freed. And whatever you do, it doesn't change the fact that Jesus died for you and is inviting you to a relationship. But we get to do more than just hang out on the sidelines and experience the story. We get to actually jump on the field and play out this story. And so, as we kind of wrap up, my invitation or my question to you is, how are you going to end this story? How are you going to jump into this world and choose your own adventure and keep living out what happened? I think that we have the opportunity to understand and believe that. We have the opportunity to let that belief shape the way that we think and we talk and we do things. I think that we get to either live like we are in denial of this experience or live as if this experience has changed us. But my hope for you guys is to really think about, if Jesus died for you like he died for Barabbas, what do you want to do next? What's the next part of the story that takes place? We know that Jesus goes to the cross. We know that he dies and comes back to life. But we don't know what Barabbas does. And you get to decide that.
buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my turn till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. Oh, my failures I tried to hide. It was my turn till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new, Jesus, when I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, but you called me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is here that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day.
Hey guys, well, I'm so happy that you joined us tonight. I hope that you laughed a little bit, that you had some fun, and that you maybe discovered and owned a little bit about who you are, who God is to you, and who we are to Him. Next week is the last part of our summer series, where Kate from the Wilmington campus is going to be talking about Mark 16, 1 through 8. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. Not just because we're finishing up the book of Mark.
Everybody's getting themselves spiritually, mentally, and emotionally prepared. There's 240 pounds of ice. There's 240 pounds of ice.
I just get in this thing!
Very upset I'm doing this.
There's 240 pounds of ice. 240 pounds of ice.
Imagine it's hot. Think your way to success. You know, that's the problem.
No. 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 How do I shut this thing off?
JK, I'm not fired. Can't get rid of me that easily.